West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Attorney General Barr saying something today that is, on the one hand, entirely ordinary. The election is over, and there was no widespread voter fraud. But on the other hand, that is also big news and allegedly news to Donald Trump after all the battles where Barr loyally, politically took Donald Trump's side in public. Barr doing an AP interview to reaffirm no evidence of systemic voter fraud. Now, we always try to keep it real with you, so let's be clear. If this sounds a little familiar, it is because it's a PR rerun of what Bill Barr already put on paper after the election, that there was no major voter fraud. In fact, it was just days after the election when the media-savvy Attorney General tried to give Donald Trump one last little itty-bitty sugar high. Couple of headlines as a balm for the loss, and he released this official-looking memo. And the very night that news broke, if you were with us, you may recall, we reported that legally the memo was just bad news for Trump because it found no voter fraud. And it only lightly tweaked the timeline for any unlikely voter fraud probes. Now, I'll tell you, we look back at this. Barr actually did get some dramatic headlines like this. That's from that night, not tonight, which had the New York Times implying there was some big special new authority, which was a bit of a stretch. Now, here we are 3 weeks later, and Barr is delivering all of this as one more predictable chaser. Because today's scoop offered to the press, we'll show you right here. You can judge for yourself. It was already in the fine print from that original memo about 3 weeks ago, stating that fraud and irregularities did not change the outcome of any election. So Donald Trump's not getting the answers he wants from the top lawyer in government. And in a sign of Trump's lack of control over Barr, at least on this matter right now, Trump wasn't calling DOJ or calling him in for a meeting. He was just reduced to plaintively tweeting at the outgoing AG today. But let's be clear. None of that means that Donald Trump's powers as a chief executive are over yet. Far from it. He is the president. And one of the president's greatest unitary or unreviewable powers is over pardons. And we now have reporting that Donald Trump has begun discussing giving a pardon to his own lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. The two discussing a preemptive pardon as recently as last week, the New York Times reports. Now, those famed prosecutors in the Southern District of New York have been investigating their former chief, Giuliani, reportedly over his Ukraine work, which, of course, helped get his client impeached.
Rudolph Giuliani under investigation for his role in Ukraine.
We learned that federal prosecutors in New York are investigating Giuliani's consulting firm.
Rudy Giuliani is under investigation by the U.S. Attorney in New York.
Now, there have been no reports of any indictments of Giuliani since that news broke. But here's what's really striking right now. This isn't just big news about a couple big names, Rudy Giuliani, whatever you think of him, as a famous American. What's striking is that Rudy Giuliani knows how this works. And he publicly denied committing any crimes related to all this. He said if the prosecutors there think he committed a crime, they're out of their minds. Quote, I've been doing this for 50 years. I know how to not commit crimes. And that may be true. But if Rudy Giuliani is certain that he didn't commit any crimes or pass any lines, why is he even discussing a preemptive pardon for himself? You don't need one of those unless you think you face real jeopardy. And if you're a lawyer, you know what real legal jeopardy looks like. I mean, people may be cynical about a lot of things, but courts and juries do not just convict people with no evidence. Indeed, it takes some hard evidence to get anywhere close to a unanimous verdict for a criminal conviction. And that goes to the very next legal headache at the White House right now. Donald Trump's own supporters, a very prominent one, suggesting that maybe like Giuliani, Trump himself also needs a pardon and should try to give it to himself.
If Biden ever became president, I'd tell Trump, pardon yourself and pardon your family.
Now, there's no reporting on whether Donald Trump would be about to do that before he leaves office. But this is also, for your context, not a random comment. Donald Trump famously listens to Hannity. He's followed some of his past public suggestions. And CNN reports a former White House official saw Trump become obsessed with the pardon power, reportedly asking about that very thing, self-pardoning. Now, it would be unprecedented. And DOJ rules currently bar a self-pardon by the president. But there's no final word on this one from the Supreme Court. History is somewhat instructive. Remember that even though Richard Nixon resigned over his misconduct as he faced a potential Senate conviction, he still never tried to pardon himself. Why not? Well, a valid pardon would have been in his interest. That makes sense. But he ultimately was not sure that a self-pardon would be valid. Richard Nixon didn't think it would necessarily hold up. And remember, that is precisely why President Ford was the one who pardoned Nixon, so that it followed the standard order of a president pardoning someone else. Take a look after Nixon resigned.
I became greatly concerned that if Mr. Nixon's prosecution and trial were prolonged, the passions generated over a long period of time would seriously disrupt the healing of our country. We have a long record of forgiving even those who have been our country's most destructive foes.
This isn't a legal comment, but forgiveness, like the pardon power, typically goes from one person to another. You cannot logically just forgive yourself. Now, legally, the consensus among experts runs against self-pardons, which is part of also why this has never been tested. But I always want to give you the facts. That history does not mean we can say whether the Supreme Court would view this hypothetical as illegal or invalid. No one really knows. Nixon didn't do it because even though he was basically a crook by history's judgment, he ultimately, in the end, deferred to some rules and traditions. Donald Trump has not been convicted of anything making him a crook. But if he's worried that he could be, will he be the first to do something violating the ultimate tradition for chief executives? It's a big question. And one of his biggest supporters, Sean Hannity, is already trying to normalize a certain answer.
It is Wednesday, the 2nd of December of 2020. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. I don't know. Maybe we could include Paula White in the midst of ridding ourselves of these priests. Ooh, yuck. Oh, man. I don't know about that lady. Actually, I do. And she's in the same ilk as the Osteens and all the rest. You know, anybody remember Reverend Ike? He's the one that coined the phrase, the lack of money is the root of all evil. And he would have pictures of his, 2 or 3 dozen Rolls Royces or some ungodly expensive car, a fleet of them. And he'd brag and say, you can't lose with the stuff I use. And grandmas across America would send him money to get these little prayer cloths. And I think $20. And that was a lot of money back in the day. and little grandma's just ate it up. And he got rich. And I believe he also went to jail, but, a grift is a grift. And Paula White's on her grift, and she's got it all the way up into the White House because, hey, grifters sometimes think big, even when they're bottom feeders. Look at Trump. He's a bottom feeder, and he made it to the presidency of the United States. And, some help, I will say, in Cyrillic, but it was help nonetheless. He won't admit it, which beggars the question. Mike Flynn, the pardoned Mike Flynn, who was pretty much convicted for treason, and Trump pardoned him. Guess what he's floating today? He signed on to a manifesto to overthrow this election, have Trump declare what he called a partial martial law. Partial, which means, only take down the black cities. And, Democratic ones, but they're all black anyway. And they're the cause of all the cyber warfare that went on in this election. So we had an investigation going on and defensive measures being taken when Vlad and his group gamed, and I will say hacked our election. Did he flip votes? I don't know. But they were hacking our power grid. They were hacking our banks. They were hacking our elections. And they did. And look, Trump got installed. We had to live with it. But there was an ongoing investigation. And that was suspect to the point where we have Durham investigating those people who were investigating Trump long before he even ran for office. But now, nefarious groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter have somehow marshaled the resources and wherewithal to have the most massive cyber warfare to get the Democrats to win, to the point that even Republican governors, secretaries of state, are in on it too. Okay. So they're calling for martial law. I'm sorry. I don't really feel like I need to build a coalition with that. Because I'm not hearing any Republicans saying, we got to stop this talk of martial law. Hell no. They're going to ride that gravy train like Paula White. So, I think that if you commit treason again, you're not already pardoned for it, no matter what this criminal in the White House puts down in his pardon letter. Okay. And, Trump taking money for pardons? He's a bottom feeder. Of course he would. Already has. You know it. All right, well, we might as well dive into what we have curated for you here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Well, Trump's talk of a self-pardon did stoke some difficult questions about Trump self-owning. He did. And there's going to be even more questions about that, I'm sure. On the rest of the menu, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin defended axing virus aid programs on the way out the door, because that's the way that guy is. Republicans are slamming Fauci for saying something he didn't say, because that's how they work. And the Mississippi State Auditor demanded that a University of Mississippi professor pay nearly $2,000 for a 2-day scholar strike that was protesting police brutality and other racial inequalities, because black professors are not allowed to do that, don't you know? After the break, we move to the chef's table, where more than 180 police officers raided homes in 3 German states after the government banned the neo-Nazi group Wolfsbrigade 44. And Russia deployed missiles to the disputed Pacific Islands claimed by Japan. Saber rattling in the Pacific during a presidential transition in the United States. Normally North Korea would do that, but Vlad will not be topped. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, off to the rightish of the page, is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln even in these times of dire. So go ahead, you're safe. Socially distanced virtually means that you're socially distanced by definition, as well as by design. Indeed. Now, if you would take a gander to the leftish of the page, that's really near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, possibly in these times of dire, or why don't you just wait? But at some point, if you're able to send us the equivalent of an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, we stretch those dollars on the quantum level. We don't even need a particle accelerator to do it. How do we do it? By, decades of practice in my case, and in other people's cases too. And in terms of Netroots Radio, it's been almost a decade. We're coming up on our 10-year anniversary. Oh my God. So anyway, we've been able to do that because of folks' generosity in allowing us to fulfill our civic duty. And all kidding aside, we take that very seriously. And we thank you for allowing us to do so. Now, if you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of me, because that's probably by design, too. Anyway, you can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. All one word, indeed. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then put that on Twitter under at Justice Putnam, so follow me there. I try to get it on the show's Twitter account at Cookbook West, but I'm sorry, I'm sometimes bereft. I apologize. And you can pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. All right, let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Am I beating up on Paula White too much? Well, I don't know. Joel Osteen's right up there, too. I hate them. Prosperity gospel BS is heresy. It's heretical. Okay? This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by the Associated Press by way of the American Independent. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin is defending his decision to close down a number of emergency Federal Reserve loan programs at a time when coronavirus cases are surging, because they're sabotaging everything and they're going to leave Joe and Kamala with a lot of work to right this ship of state. They've been punching holes in it. God, these people. Well, Democrats were unconvinced, however, saying that Mnuchin's actions are politically motivated and intended to remove tools that the Biden administration could use to support the economy. Yeah, they're punching holes in the ship of state everywhere they can. Mnuchin argued that the programs he decided not to extend into next year were being lightly utilized. He said that the $455 billion allocated for those Fed loan programs could be better used elsewhere if Congress moved the funds into relief programs for small businesses and unemployed workers. Democrats aired their criticism as Mnuchin and Fed Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell testified at a Senate Banking Committee oversight hearing yesterday, Tuesday, about the $2 trillion CARES Act approved by Congress last March. Powell, as he had before, urged Congress to authorize further economic support, something that lawmakers have been struggling to do for months because Moscow Mitch McConnell wants to punch some more holes in the ship of state because if it sinks, I guess maybe the salvage company will come from Russia. If you follow my metaphor. A bipartisan group of lawmakers pressured congressional leaders yesterday, Tuesday, to accept a compromise to end the impasse before Congress adjourns for the holidays. And you know what that means? Everybody that has murdered people purposely and took wagers on how many of their employees would get COVID will be immune from prosecution and liability for any deaths during the pandemic, even those they purposefully caused. And we're supposed to compromise with that. Provencher of the American Independent brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Donald Trump and other GOP politicians are attacking Dr. Anthony Fauci on social media, falsely claiming the top infectious diseases specialist said in a weekend interview that schools should never have closed during the COVID-19 pandemic. Retweeting a Fox News clip, Trump weaponized Fauci's ABC interview against him. The president was right when he said to get the kids back in school. Now Dr. Fauci says, you know what? I'm looking at the data. The kids should be in school, Trump tweeted, quoting Fox and Friends co-host Brian Kilmeade. Senator Rand Paul, repug of West Virginia, was equally quick to accuse Fauci of lying and hypocrisy because Rand Paul's not a doctor. No matter how many times he says he is. Self-appointed does not make you a doctor. I told him schools should remain open multiple times over the summer, Paul tweeted Sunday, adding that Fauci owes an apology to every single parent and school-aged child in America. And yeah, Senator Ted Cruz was also salty on Monday about what he sees as unnecessary school closures. Dem priorities, he tweeted, listing prosecute Tiger King with a check mark beside it, an oblique reference to an upcoming House vote concerning private ownership of tigers and lions. Accompanied by red X's were other items: emergency COVID relief, help small businesses, reopen the economy and get kids back in school. But Fauci never said schools shouldn't have closed, nor that they should all immediately reopen. Close the bars and keep the schools open is what we really say, Fauci said in a Sunday interview with ABC this week. Obviously, you don't have one size fits all, but as I said in the past, the default position should be to try as best as possible, within reason, to keep children in school or get them back to school. When you look at the data, Fauci said, transmission among children from children is not really very big at all, not like one would have suspected. He added that while officials should try to get kids back, the swiftest way for schools to reopen safely is to first contain the community spread of the disease. Now, there's nothing new about this assessment. It aligns with months-old guidance from both the World Health Organization and the CDC, both of which advocated for a case-by-case approach to schools reopening. The CDC's August guidelines describe a continuum of risk, ranging from all virtual learning as the least risky model for schools to adopt, to in-person learning as the riskiest. They recommend school districts make decisions based on their local COVID numbers and risk mitigation options, with virtual learning being the safest option when there's wide community spread. But the CDC cautions while children themselves are at a lower risk, that must be weighed against the higher risk posed to teachers, administrators, and staff whose rate of transmission reflects the trends of the surrounding community. And the September 14 guidelines from the World Health Organization also advise a risk-based analysis to reopening schools. Now, the facts have not stopped right-wing media from pushing the myth that Fauci is changing his story, though. Far-right outlet The Federalist ran a hit piece accusing Fauci of keeping schools closed to spite Trump. Anonymous worker bees from the Associated Press directly bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Mississippi State Auditor demanded yesterday, Tuesday, that a University of Mississippi professor pay nearly $2,000 after a 2-day work stoppage to protest police brutality and other racial inequities. State Auditor Shad White demanded sociology professor James Thomas pay $1,912.42, and that would have been $946.74 for pay and $965.68 for interest and investigative costs. White said that the strike was illegal. White began investigating the sociology professor after Thomas participated in a September 8th and 9th scholar strike, in which professors and others altered their classes to protest racism, police brutality, and other racial injustice issues. It's simple. The taxpayers of Mississippi cannot pay someone when they did not provide the good or service they had to provide, White said in a statement. In short, he refused to perform his duties, and his tuition-paying students suffered as a result. The taxpayers and donors to the university suffered too. White donors? Really? Thomas's attorney, Rob McDuff, said Thomas met his responsibilities that week and did nothing illegal. He said the professor prepares lectures and reading assignments and allows students to work at their own pace each week. If the auditor wants to pay Thomas for the personal days he has not used, the weekends and holidays he has worked over the years, including those he worked preparing the lesson plan that week, then maybe we can talk about whether he should pay any money because of his participation in the scholars' strike, McDuff said in a statement to the Clarion Ledger. The outspoken sociology professor has sometimes clashed with state Republicans. After Brett Kavanaugh was confirmed to the Supreme Court in October of 2018, Thomas came under broad criticism from conservatives after the professor said on Twitter that people should disrupt U.S. senators' meals. They don't deserve your civility, Thomas wrote. Wow, that's the kind of professor I want teaching my kids. Okay, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, more Munchausen. Prior to a disturbing episode of The X-Files in the 90s, it's doubtful that Munchausen syndrome by proxy was known to anyone outside a small cadre of mental health professionals. Since then, though, it's become a go-to plot device. Think The Sixth Sense, Everything, Everything, or the series Sharp Objects. The movie Run opens with Diane, a tearful mother, briefly eyeing a premature baby in a hospital ward before the action fast-forwards 17 years to find Chloe, a well-adjusted but seriously disabled teen, living with Mom in a small town in Washington State. Chloe is awaiting college acceptance letters as she begins to notice little things and add them up. Mom's attention to mail delivery, discrepancies with her prescriptions, mysterious internet outages, etc. Director and screenwriter Anish Chaganty, who gave us 2018's well-received Searching, slowly ramps up Mom's crazy as Chloe is forced to take increasingly desperate action to save herself and expose Diane. Like most thrillers, one can question the timing of certain insights and the visibility of some twists, but make no mistake, there are jump tricks and things you won't see coming, plus a mildly devilish epilogue. Part of what drives this one are the performances of the two leads. Sarah Paulson continues her recent run of portrayals of unsettling women, and you'll admire the physicality of newcomer Kiera Allen playing the disabled Chloe until you admire her even more after finding out that she really is disabled, making her the first actress since Susan Peters in 1948 to star in a film from a wheelchair. While thriller aficionados might have some gripes around the edges, Run hasn't become the most viewed movie ever on its exclusive platform Hulu without reason. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. 76 million years ago, a group of small mammals huddled in a burrow in what's now Montana. They were good diggers, most likely furry and petite.
They could sit comfortably in the palm of your hand. I mean, if you saw them running around today, you'd probably think it looks like a small rodent of some sort, like a chipmunk or a mouse or something like that.
Lucas Weaver is a mammal paleobiologist at the University of Washington. These little creatures didn't belong to any of the three main mammal groups on the planet today, which are the placental mammals like us, monotremes like the platypus, and marsupials like koalas and kangaroos. Instead, they belong to another, now extinct group called the multituberculates.
Their teeth is what really distinguishes them from any other group of mammals. So they have these really bizarre molars with these multiple bumps on the teeth, which is where they get their name. Multituberculate just means many bumps.
Weaver and his colleagues have studied the fossilized skulls and skeletons of these animals, dug up in Montana, and they've given them a name, Phyllocames primavis, friendly or neighborly mouse. The details are in the journal Nature, Ecology, and Evolution. Weaver says drought or climate change may have killed the animals, though it's hard to be sure, but the critters were fossilized together in ways that suggest they sought out each other's company. That's a big deal, because it's commonly thought that social behavior didn't arise in mammals until after the death of the dinosaurs, 10 million years after these small critters hung out together.
The narrative for decades has been that mammals that were living during the time of dinosaurs were mostly solitary, rat-like creatures that were kind of scuttling in the night under the foot of dinosaurs. And so the fact that we're finding these multituberculate mammals, a totally unrelated and ancient group of mammals that's apparently exhibiting social behavior, means that this was probably not uncommon among these early Mesozoic mammals. And it kind of changes the narrative of, sociality is somehow unique to placental mammals.
Even today, social behavior is relatively rare among mammals. But these findings suggest the need for company in some mammalian species is an ancient evolutionary invention. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. From a very young age, we're encouraged to eat fruits and vegetables. Unfortunately, many Americans are not getting the message. Dr. Seung-Hee Lee Kwon is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. She's joining us today to discuss the importance of eating enough fruits and vegetables. Welcome to the show, Seung-Hee.
Thank you for having me.
Seung-Hee, what is the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
The federal guidelines recommend that adults consume at least 1.5 cups to 2 cups of fruit and 2 to 3 cups of vegetables each day. This is for adults who get less than 30 minutes of physical activity a day. Adults who are more physically active need more calories and thus should be eating more fruits and vegetables. 1 cup is about 12 strawberries or 1 large tomato.
How many people consume the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
We found that very few adults are getting enough fruits and vegetables. Just 12% are eating the recommended amount of fruits, and less than 1 in 10 eat enough vegetables. And consumption is lower among men, young adults, and adults living in poverty.
Why is eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables so important?
Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help with 3 things. 1, it can reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and deaths, such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, some cancers, and even obesity. It can also add important nutrients that are commonly missing in Americans' diet. And it can help with weight management if adults consume fruits and vegetables instead of other calorie-dense foods.
How can we meet the recommended daily intake of fruits and vegetables?
Try to fill half of your plate with fruits or vegetables at each meal or every eating occasion. Making fruits and vegetables the focal point of your meal will help you meet your recommendations. For example, recent studies have shown that adults get most of their fruit during breakfast and snacks. So you can try adding berries to your morning oatmeal or grab a piece of fresh fruit as an afternoon snack. For vegetables, most adults eat them at dinner, so try adding more into your lunch by adding a side salad or packing a snack of baby carrots or grape tomatoes.
Are canned or frozen products just as good as fresh?
All forms of fruits and vegetables count towards meeting the recommendations. For the most health benefits, make sure that the fruits and vegetables you consume have a limited amount of salt, butter, sugar, or creamy sauces. When selecting canned fruits, choose the ones with lowest sugars. And for canned or frozen vegetables, choose those lower in sodium.
Where can listeners get more information about eating a healthy diet?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/nutrition or choosemyplate.gov.
Thanks, Seung-Hee. I've been talking today with Seung-Hee Lee Kwon about the importance of eating a healthy diet. Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and death and add important nutrients to your diet. Make sure you're eating enough. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
In 2012 in the United States, about 317,000 motor vehicle crashes involved a large truck. 26,000 truck drivers and their passengers were injured in these crashes, and about 700 died. Trucker safety requires an alert, buckled-up, experienced driver with a reliable vehicle and a strong employer safety program. Seat belts are the most effective way to prevent an injury or death in a motor vehicle crash, but in 2013, 1 in 6 drivers of large trucks didn't use their seat belts. Employers can help truck drivers stay safe by committing to driver safety programs at the highest level of leadership, establishing and enforcing driver safety policies, including requiring everyone in the truck to buckle up, and addressing factors that contribute to crashes, such as drowsy and distracted driving. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Gosh, our trasher-in-chief has really been busy lately, calling Kamala Harris nasty and calling our post offices a joke. But instead of trash talking, shouldn't a president be, running the government? Nah, that bores him. Besides, that's why he packed his cabinet with all those corporate lobbyists who are skilled at trying to rig our government to serve moneyed elites. Now, empowered by Trump, these special interests are our government, literally setting and running America's economic, environmental, health, and other public policies. And what a job they're doing. On us. Check out Andrew Wheeler, head of Trump's EPA. He had been the top lobbyist for a coal mining giant, constantly fighting environmental rules to make this notoriously foul industry clean up its act. Now, the befouler's lobbyist is making the rules, allowing big coal and other fossil fuel giants to pour more toxic contaminants into our air and water. Wheeler wails that his poor multi-billion-dollar former clients must be freed from burdensome requirements to limit the damage they do to the health of America's people and our planet. Burdensome? His latest edict frees oil and gas corporations from having to fix methane leaks in their wells, pipelines, etc. Fixing leaks is burdensome? Hello, if you had a gas leak at your house, would you not want to burden the company to come fix it? Not only is methane a potent greenhouse gas causing climate change, but Wheeler's don't worry about it favor to his industry buddies comes just as scientists have discovered that methane leaks are 2 to 3 times worse than his EPA has been reporting. This means the industry is driving us toward a climate crisis faster than anyone realized. This is Jim Hightower saying, talk about nasty. The Trumpeteers have turned government totally bass-ackwards, protecting polluters instead of people.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2001. That was the day that energy trading giant Enron filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It was the biggest bankruptcy in U.S. history up to that time. At its peak, the Houston-based Enron was the 7th largest company in the country. A combination of mismanagement and all-out greed sank Enron. The company used numerous accounting tricks and loopholes to hide billions of dollars of debt from its shareholders. In August of 2000, shares of the company were worth $90.75. But by November 30th, 2001, they had plummeted to just 26 cents. After filing bankruptcy, thousands of Enron employees were left to go down with the ship. Many employees and retirees had thousands of dollars worth of Enron stock. Employees were told the company would recover. They were encouraged not to sell off their stock and even to buy more, while at the same time, top executives were dumping their stock holdings. When the company went under, the employees' retirement accounts were wiped out. Some who had already retired had to re-enter the workforce. The following January, a New York Times report shared the stories of some of the 4,000 employees laid off in the immediate aftermath of the bankruptcy. One was told he lost his job by voicemail. Another was told he had 30 minutes to clear out his desk. Multiple lawsuits won a portion of the money back for Enron stockholders. But the employees lost more than $2 billion in retirement funds. In the end, more than 20 top executives were found guilty for the crimes they committed while running the company. Enron became synonymous with the corporate greed that has been the hallmark of 21st century America. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
To date, we have not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome in the election. That's a direct quote from Attorney General William Barr. Now, we've heard variations of that statement repeated in state after state for the past 3 weeks as Donald Trump and his followers continue to push ridiculous conspiracy theories. But this time, again, the statement came from the Attorney General, who told the Associated Press that U.S. attorneys and FBI agents followed up on all specific complaints they received. Of course, Donald Trump has refused to concede and repeatedly made baseless allegations of voter fraud. Shortly after Barr spoke with the Associated Press, Trump tweeted more unfounded claims of fraud. Rudy Giuliani, Trump's personal attorney and head of a legal team challenging the election results, said that, quote, with all due respect to the Attorney General, there hasn't been any semblance of an investigation. Deny, deny, deny. Perhaps in an attempt to mitigate the response, Barr then announced that more than a month ago, he had appointed U.S. Attorney John Durham a special counsel under the same federal statute that governed Special Counsel Robert Mueller in the original Russia probe. Barr said Durham's investigation into the origins of the probe has been narrowing to focus more on the conduct of FBI agents who had worked on the Russia investigation known as Crossfire Hurricane. This clears the way for the investigation to allegedly continue into the next administration without being easily fired. Okay. A Centers for Disease Control panel on vaccines voted Tuesday to recommend that healthcare workers and residents of long-term care facilities receive the first doses of coronavirus vaccines when they're made available, perhaps as soon as before the end of the month. The panel said the roughly 21 million healthcare workers are one of the highest priorities because of their exposure to the virus and their important role in keeping the healthcare system going. The 3 million long-term care facility residents are also at the top of the list because they've accounted for nearly 40% of all COVID-19 deaths in the United States.
How do you spell relief?
Certainly not with a GOP. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell on Tuesday rejected a new bipartisan coronavirus stimulus proposal valued at $908 billion. Joint proposal by members of the Republican-led Senate and Democratic-controlled House had been seen as a sign of hope that the lame duck Congress would be able to get something done to help individuals, businesses, hospitals, and local governments, among others, as coronavirus infections, hospitalizations, and deaths surge across the country. But when asked about the proposal, McConnell said, quote, we don't have the time to waste? Huh? So McConnell reportedly supports a $500 billion targeted relief bill and suggested including in it spending legislation needed to avert a government shutdown. President-elect Joe Biden, meanwhile, unveiled his economic team, promising that help is on the way to people struggling financially due to the pandemic. And he urged Congress to, quote, come together and pass a robust package. Well, speaking of relief, Britain on Wednesday approved a COVID-19 vaccine developed by Pfizer and its German partner BioNTech for emergency use. The British government plans to roll out the vaccine beginning next week and is the first Western nation to approve a coronavirus vaccine. Pfizer's applications to the United States and Europe are still pending. British Health Secretary Matt Hancock said he was absolutely thrilled and very proud that the UK is the first place in the world to have a clinically authorized vaccine. He said China has approved 3 experimental vaccines and inoculated 1 million people since July. Russia has vaccinated frontline workers with its Sputnik 5 shot since August. And then there's Rudy Giuliani, who reportedly has spoken with Trump about receiving a preemptive pardon before Trump leaves office next month. The New York Times reporting Tuesday, citing 2 people who were told about the discussion, that Giuliani reportedly is under investigation by federal prosecutors in Manhattan for his business dealings in Ukraine and for his part in the ouster of the U.S. ambassador in the country. Trump also reportedly has talked to his advisors about possible pardons, not only for Giuliani, but for his 3 eldest children and his son-in-law and senior advisor, Jared Kushner. Keep that in mind while you listen to this story. Separately, a judge unsealed documents revealing a months-long Justice Department investigation into a bribery for pardon scheme. In a 20-page, heavily redacted opinion, U.S. District Judge Beryl Howell wrote that attorney-client privilege did not protect certain communications if they were alleged to be part of a bribery for pardon scheme. Stay tuned. And finally, a high-ranking Georgia state election official, Gabriel Sterling, went viral on Tuesday. He held a press conference in which he criticized the president and the two current Republicans who are both running in a special election on January 5th for the dangerous circus they've created and for failing to condemn death threats made against a local election worker.
It has all gone too far. All of it. Joe DeGenova today asked for Chris Krebs, a patriot who ran CISA, to be shot. A 20-something tech in Gwinnett County today has death threats and a noose put out saying he should be hung for treason because he was transferring a report on batches from an EMS to a county computer so he could read it. It has to stop. Mr. President, you have not condemned these actions or this language. Senators, you have not condemned this language or these actions. This has to stop. We need you to step up, and if you're going to take a position of leadership, show some.
Gabriel Sterling, you're our hero today. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Brrr! A sun and clouds will be mixed. We have only one sun, and we have lots of clouds, but they're going to be mixed today with a high in the mid-50s, they say. Winds light and variable. Partly to mostly cloudy tonight with lows only in the mid-30s, they say. Winds light and variable. Tomorrow, a high in the low 50s, intervals of clouds and sunshine. Highs, as I said, in the mid or low 50s and winds light and variable. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County, here in the southern part of Oregon, now stand at 3,951 with 35 dead. We keep increasing both numbers every day. Pollen outside the window here in Rogue River proper is rated at none. The air quality index for the region is good at 24 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at 1. And let's see, barometric pressure is 30.21 inches. Visibility is down to a quarter mile because we have quite a bit of fog out there, ice fog. And the relative humidity is at 95%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 45 and cloudy. Paris is 47 and cloudy. Rome is 47 with rain. Kyiv is 31 with a light, freezing drizzle. Kabul is 45 with their ever-present smoke this time of year. Hong Kong is clear at 61 degrees. Tokyo is 46 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 65 and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 47 degrees and sunny. And New York is 40 degrees Fahrenheit and mostly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. More than 180 police officers raided homes in 3 German states after the German government banned a far-right group, the Interior Ministry said yesterday, Tuesday. The homes of 11 members of the far-right group Wolfsbrigade 44 were searched in Hesse, Mecklenburg, West Pomerania, and North Rhine-Westphalia to confiscate the group's funds and far-right propaganda material, the German news agency DPA reported. Whoever fights against the basic values of our free society will get to feel the resolute reaction of our government, Interior Minister Horst Seehofer said. There is no place in this country for an association that sows hatred and works on the resurrection of the Nazi state. The members of the group want to reestablish a Nazi dictatorship and abolish democracy, the Interior Ministry said. The 44 in their name stands for the 4th letter in the alphabet, DD, and is an abbreviation for Division Derlavanger. Oscar Derlavanger was a known Nazi war criminal and commander of the Nazi SS Special Unit. The far-right group, founded in 2016, is also known for its anti-Semitic and racist ideology, as well as its violent and aggressive appearances in public and on social media. On Tuesday, officers found knives, a machete, a crossbow, and bayonets during their raids. They also seized Nazi devotional objects such as swastikas and flags. Earlier this year, the German government banned other far-right groups, including the Combat 18 and the Nordlander. In a separate investigation, the Defense Ministry said that 8 suspects had been questioned by military intelligence in connection with an investigation that has been going on since the end of last year. That investigation is centered on soldiers and several civilian employees working at a regional office of the military in Ulm, who are thought to be linked to a so-called Reichsbürger movement. Or Reich citizens have similarities to the sovereign citizen movements in the U.S. and elsewhere. They reject the authority of the modern German state and promote the notion of natural rights, often mixing this ideology with far-right politics and esoteric conspiracy theories. Wow, that sounds familiar, almost like a virus that's been going around.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Even more anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Russian military announced that the deployment of state-of-the-art air defense missiles to the Pacific Islands claimed by Japan. Russia's Eastern Military District said in a statement that the S-300V4 air defense missile systems have entered combat duty on the Kuril Islands, adding punch to the shorter-range Tor M2 missile systems deployed there earlier. The new deployment marked the latest move in a continuous Russian military buildup on the islands, which has included stationing advanced fighter jets and anti-ship missiles there. Decades of diplomatic efforts to negotiate a settlement between Japan and Russia have not produced any visible results, I bet. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grit Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. We'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.